Hi, my name's Penny, and as usual, I'm here to talk about some bookish things. Specifically, today we're going to be talking about some of my favorite books from 2019. However, it looks like I'm going to hit 250 books for the year of 2019, and that is a lot of books. And when I tried to pick out some top books and get it down to a reasonable number to talk about in a single video, it was too hard. And how do you even compare books from different genres and books that you enjoyed in really different ways? I don't know, it was impossible. So instead, I've decided I'm going to do several top videos, each one dealing with a different genre. And today we're going to talk about high fantasy. So this is fantasy books that are more the classic fantasies with kings and queens and fantastical worlds. So those are the books we're going to talk about today, the ones that I enjoyed this year. And also, a lot of these are series, and I'm just going to wrap up the series together because, again, too many books. Too many books. So we're going to count down the top 5 fantasy books, and number 5 is The Fifth Season by N.K. Jemisin. This is set in a dystopian world where the world regularly kind of has an apocalypse and falls apart. There's earthquakes all the time, and most people have some degree of this sense where they can feel earthquakes coming, and there are special people who are also able to manipulate the earth, move earthquakes around, cause new earthquakes, that kind of thing. And people don't trust those people, so they are very marginalized. They kind of have to keep their powers to themselves. We follow a few different perspectives. A girl who's learning to use these powers at the one official school where you're allowed to do that. An older woman whose husband has just found out that her and her children have that ability and has killed her son and taken off with her daughter. And what's the third perspective? There were 3 perspectives. Oh, the third perspective is a woman who has kind of just gotten through the school and is now going out on her first quest. The main criticism some people have for this book is that one of those perspectives is written in second person, which is definitely a strange perspective. However, in the end, I think that perspective being written in second person made a lot of sense. It was sometimes hard to read, but I still, by the end of this book, I decided that any of the hard work getting through this book was 100% worth it, and I really enjoyed it. Definitely there is a fair amount of violence, trigger warnings for child death, but if you like the moon and you like dystopians, then I think you would like this book. And I haven't continued the series yet, but I'm really excited to do that. Then number 4, I don't own because I got this series all from the library, but I do have a plan when I'm working again next year to buy my own copy, and that is the Nevernight series by J. Kristoff. So this year I read all 3 books, Nevernight, God's Grave, and the conclusion, Dark Dawn. These books are really beautiful for starters, and we follow this girl named Mia who is going to this assassin school in order to learn how to be an assassin so that she can get revenge on the people that destroyed her family. She also has this shadow magic where she can manipulate shadows, and she has this shadow cat as a familiar. I really enjoyed the magical aspect of this world. And some really horrible things happen to Mia. I mean, trigger warnings for pretty much everything in this series. It's very dark. But at the same time, I still feel like it's written in a way that is sort of in between YA and adult. Like, a lot of the stuff that happens is very dark and gritty and awful, and it doesn't necessarily approach those themes in a YA accessible manner. However, the assassin school setting does feel very YA, so kind of in between. But in the end, the emotional impact this book had on me definitely pushed it up to one of my favorites of the year. Then another fantasy series that I picked up this year is The Realm of the Elderlings by Robin Hogg. So far I've only read the first trilogy, the Farseer trilogy, and I've started the second trilogy, The Live Ship Traders. The first trilogy was definitely my favorite, but I'm hopeful that some of the future books in the series I will love as much as I love that one. We follow this young boy, Fitz, who is the bastard son of the king in waiting, and his mother basically drops him off and says, you need to look after him now. And so this young child is in the middle of all this political intrigue, and he ends up, as the titles of the trilogy would suggest, he ends up being trained as an assassin. But there's also a magical element to this world. The royal line has the skill, which is a kind of telepathy that lets them read other people's thoughts as well as manipulate other people's thinking and actions. And there's also a kind of beast magic where people are able to communicate with animals mind to mind as well. There's also this really horrible part where there's these pirates who will steal people away, and then the threat is that if they don't get what they want, they will return the people, which at first the villagers are like, well, that doesn't sound so bad, we want our people back. But when they return the people, their minds have been stripped and they're like vicious animals now. They just don't have any kind of empathy. So it's kind of not that great when they get returned and they destroy everything. So I also found that in a really interesting part of the plot. I just think that even though Fitz is sometimes a really frustrating character, overall he's always trying to do what's best for the kingdom, and I found myself really caring about the kingdom and what's going on in the world. So then the second best fantasy series that I read this year would be Strange the Dreamer and Muse of Nightmares by Laini Taylor. I read both of them this year, and this book was massively hyped when it first came out and continues to be very hyped, and I definitely understand why. It has a beautiful writing style and the world is also so interesting, although the plot of the story is very hard to talk about without giving spoilers. Basically, there is this place called Weep, or it used to be called something else, but suddenly that name was ripped away from it, and now nobody can remember the real name. It's just referred to as Weep. Anywhere where it's written down, it's referred to as Weep. And we follow this boy named Laszlo Strange as he becomes a librarian and starts studying this strange land, which we eventually get to visit and learn a lot more about. The world in this book is really amazing, and the different magic is so interesting. I think you don't really get to understand it fully until the second book, when some other characters are introduced, but I just loved all the characters in this book, and I thought the writing style was so beautiful. I can definitely understand that for some people they would find the writing style very slow, and I will also say that the romance sometimes was a bit more drawn out, and there was a lot more focus on the romance than I personally would have liked, but that's because I don't tend to like very much romance in my books. So I think if I can put up with the level of romance in these books, then probably most people can. But really, you should just read a few chapters of this, and I think you would either be completely addicted and unable to stop reading it, or you would realize that it's not for you. Personally, I hope that Laini Taylor will write some more in this world, because there is definitely scope for more stories. Okay, so then the number one position, the best high fantasy series that I read this year, I also don't own because I got it from the library, and I've only read the first 2 books in the series, but that was 2,000 pages, so I have read quite a lot of the series. There is still one more book and another book to be released next year. Have you guessed it yet? It is The Stormlike Archives by Brandon Sanderson. In classic Brandon Sanderson style, this is an amazingly complex world. The magic system gets revealed over time, so I can't really give you very much information about it, but it's very complex. There's a lot of different things going on. Primarily, we are following this war between 2 different races or species, because I'm not even sure you can really count one of them as humanoid, although they're kind of. As I said, Brandon Sanderson is always so creative that this world is just beyond description, and I really love how he investigates different value systems, I guess, as part of his stories. I think the emotional journey that he takes us on with each of the characters feels very genuine, and he really looks at some serious issues, but in this fantasy context, which somehow just makes everything feel much more real. These books are definitely very intimidating because they are so thick. I really want to read Oathbringer, which is the 3rd book in the series, but I just know that it's going to take me like a whole month to do it, so I need to figure out when is the right month to do that. And then later next year, the 4th book, Rhythm of War, is going to be released, and so that will also be exciting, but I'm sure it's also going to be really long. I have said before, I don't necessarily think the Stormlight Archives is the right place to start with Brandon Sanderson. I'd probably suggest starting with either Elantris or Mistborn, but if you like Brandon Sanderson and you haven't been picking up the Stormlight Archives yet because you're just so intimidated with the size of them, then trust me, you will love them. If you love the rest of Brandon Sanderson's stuff, there's no reason why you wouldn't like the Stormlight Archives, and it is definitely worth the effort of getting through those huge chunky books. So those are my top 5 fantasies that I've read this year. Do let me know what you thought about those books, or are there any other fantasy books that you think I would enjoy, given that these are my favorites of the year. Otherwise, that's all for now. Do check in over the next few days as I post the rest of the videos about my top books in 2019. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time.